the biggest win in consumer privacy that I've seen in years. They've just destroyed it.
Jeremy Galula with the Electronic Frontier Foundation is outraged by the bill, which allows your online information to be stored and sold by broadband internet service providers like AT&T, Comcast, and Verizon without your consent. Your browsing history, online shopping habits, even apps and GPS history on your cell phone can now be up for sale.
An Oregon judge made history recently after granting a person in Portland the freedom to become genderless. The 27-year-old is supposedly the first legally genderless person in the United States, the man told NBC News. Even gender-neutral pronouns don't feel as if they fit me. I feel no identity or closeness with any pronouns I've come across. What describes me is my name. No U.S. court has ever granted a legally genderless status before now.
These are the weapons that school and police officials had feared would be used in a massacre planned for April 5th. A shotgun, bomb-making materials, including pipes for a pipe bomb. A Columbine-style attack allegedly plotted by an 18-year-old student at Catoctin High School, 90 minutes from Washington.
There is no doubt in our minds that we averted a disaster up there.
According to the sheriff, that student, Nicole Severio, had kept a chilling diary with a timeline about the imminent attack and detail about the school's emergency procedures. But her alleged plot was foiled by her own father, who alerted school officials and police on Thursday when he discovered the diary. Police say the girl's diary specifically mentions Columbine. It's part of a disturbing trend. An ABC News investigation found that in the last 17 years, there have been at least 79 thwarted school massacre plots. More than half of the would-be attackers mentioned Columbine.
The two pro-life activists who exposed Planned Parenthood's practice of selling baby body parts are now being charged with 15 felonies in the state of California for violating the privacy of healthcare providers. Journalists David DeLayden and Sandra Merritt face a felony count for each person they secretly recorded and an additional felony charge for criminal conspiracy. The charges come 8 months after similar charges were dropped in Texas, but the California judge says the pair violated privacy law.
Tonight, the new government warning of a growing phone scam.
Can you hear me okay?
Teresa Thomas says she got the call at home in Minneapolis.
She was giggling and she said, "Oh, I didn't expect you to pick up. Can you hear me?"
Seems innocent enough, but here's how it works. You pick up. The voice on the line asks, "Can you hear me?" When you answer yes, the scammer is recording and can use that yes to authorize future charges. Teresa was lucky.
If it sounds fishy, hang up and don't provide any information, of course, about you.
Tonight, experts urging caution. Don't answer calls from unknown numbers. Take advantage of any free robocall blocking service from your phone carrier and report suspicious numbers to the FCC.
The Republican legislation narrowly made it through the Senate Thursday with the help of GOP Senator Johnny Isakson of Georgia, who returned to Capitol Hill after back surgery, and the tie-breaking vote cast by Vice President Mike Pence, so the measure passed 51-50. In addition to allowing states to deny federal funds to Planned Parenthood and other abortion providers, Republicans say the bill lets states divert that money to organizations that don't perform abortions, like community health centers. The House already approved the measure last month. The bill now goes to President Trump, who is expected to sign it. Democrats called the bill an attack on women. Senator Patty Murray of Washington labeled it shameful and dangerous. If the measure becomes law as expected, it would give Republicans and pro-life groups a morale boost and a victory after the party's health care overhaul failed to come to a vote in the House last week.
Well, Orphans Promise is partnering with Superbook to reach children in Cuba with the gospel message. After the recent warming of U.S.-Cuba relations, Orphans Promise began operating on the island last year. It has reached more than 13,000 kids in that time, and 1,400 of them have accepted Jesus Christ. Children who attend the events receive school supplies, Superbook DVDs, and a warm meal. They also receive Christian mentorship and get connected to a local church. This year's Gizmo Tour is hoping to launch 200 more academies and Superbook clubs that will reach 30,000 Cuban children in 2017.
When Disney recently promoted a gay moment in its remake of Beauty and the Beast, it pointed to a troubling trend for many believers. an anti-faith bias that seems to be growing. It can be seen on college campuses like Vanderbilt University, which force Christian student clubs to welcome non-Christians in leadership, or in the media's support for LGBT activists and disdain for those who speak of religious liberty. Faith and culture expert Billy Hallowell says what's most concerning is that this anti-faith bias is now well entrenched in our most important cultural institutions, or the big three, as he calls them.
When you're not presenting both sides of something, when you're not giving people options, whether it's at a university, whether it's in the media, whether it's in Hollywood, you're essentially robbing people of the ability to make a choice.
And millennials are perhaps most affected by this dynamic as they've grown up with a glut of media and entertainment.
People are much more disconnected, I think, from what is happening, desensitized to it. And really the end effect of that, the big change, is that opinions are shifting.
A millennial himself, Hallowell looks closer at these dramatic changes in his new book, Fault Line. One wake-up call? Polls which show a growing number of Americans who don't have an issue with premarital sex and having a baby outside of marriage. Also, support for multiple romantic relationships has doubled. And now almost 2/3 of the country sees homosexuality as okay. At the same time, going to church is no longer a way of life for almost 1/4 of all Americans, with millennials leading the way.
Generational replacement is happening, that there is a larger number of people at this point as millennials who are disassociated with faith than previous generations were at this point.
Hallowell points the finger squarely at the big three.
I don't think we've taken enough time to look at all of those areas together, right? Because that to me was like sort of the eye-opening thing, because it's easy to sort of complain about an individual area and to take a show and pick it apart. But when you really start to look at data and information and logically break it down, it really does become troubling.
That data includes numbers like this. Almost 6 in 10 college professors describe themselves as liberal or far left. Only around 1 in 10 say they're conservative. That's a 50% difference, which translates into what Hallowell calls liberal privilege.
People who are liberal or maybe not affiliated enjoy the ability to sort of speak freely, whereas people who don't associate with those beliefs have a harder time maybe speaking up.
One clear example happened in 2009, when the media blasted Miss USA contestant Carrie Prejean for her answer to a question about gay marriage.
I think that I believe that a marriage should be between a man and a woman, no offense.
If that girl would have won Miss USA California, I would have gone up on stage, snatched that tiara off her head, and run out the door.
Hallowell believes that outcry fits with a normalization of rampant sexual activity. It has infiltrated television, making the so-called family hour obsolete. As a dad, Hallowell felt he had few choices for his kids. His instinct proved correct when a Barna report found that less than 1% of Americans believe Hollywood is faithful to Christian beliefs. Even more concerning is the subtle anti-faith bias that people often miss.
I think the covert is much more problematic and dangerous, and it's the thing that we don't think is a problem, right?
To top it all off, our guide to these events and trends, the mainstream media. Just 8% of journalists say they attend church or synagogue every week. That contributes, says Hallowell, to a worldview bias, a bias in selecting stories and content, and most recently, election night coverage that resembled a funeral.